We've got a friend of ours has asked a question, Ken Sloan. He's the director of stewardship for the United Methodist Church. He asked this question: should churches budget for the new year based on the percentage of previous year's income and then apply Ken's 80-20 principle?
So that's a great question. So I would approach this on the fact that, of course, historical information is very important, right? When we start thinking about trends, it's not just last year. I would say multiple years to get an idea as to how are things looking from an average basis. From there, that's a great starting point. And that's where the 80-20 principle then comes into play. As leadership, we want to talk through, okay, what are some of the things that we are noticing on top of just the day-to-day programs that we currently have in place? How can we provide resources, whether that's time and money towards that? And if that's the case, since I know that what we have right now from our current foundation of historical information, how do we reallocate as needed so that we are not neglecting what's going well, but allowing some ability to be flexible so that we can try these new areas? And again, if it doesn't work well, we can always readjust as needed. But if it is working great, that allows us then just to have a key focal point for an additional conversation as we progress through the year. So yeah, I think what Ken is talking about there then is using, I would say, not just last year, but a couple of years to get a good idea of the trends. Because of course, the last 2 or 3 years have been fairly, I would say, variable in general. So having that together as a good starting point, and then using that to launch off that conversation on what are some new programs, and if there are, what do we need to do to reallocate from our current availability to make that work for us?
So Matt asked this question: is 2023 a time for a capital campaign targeted on popular or needed programs or campus needs? I may not be answering this the way that you've asked it, Matt, but this is what we are seeing in terms of trends around capital campaigns. Capital campaigns right now for debt reduction and campus upgrades, a little more scaled down than maybe a large, expansive new children's wing. Those are doing extremely well. People are understanding the need to take care of what exists. And so if debt is an issue, or you've got some kind of deferred maintenance that doesn't create something visual, like you've got to put a new roof on, or asphalt the parking lot, or update the HVAC, that your committed core will almost always help you with that. But if you are want to draw in the larger portion of the church, then you need something that's attractional, that meets a felt need. So what we found is marrying those two together is bringing really positive results. If you're needing to build new space, then it's important that you do some good pre-campaign development to make sure that you've got the why answer, the need is felt by your ministry and financial leaders, and not just assume that they're going to support building something new without a good reason for it. We are absolutely seeing churches being successful when they need something new, they need to make their case for it. So Don asked this question: what about physical plant, future needs, and building reserves? I think he's probably talking about setting aside a sinking fund or a trustees fund. Do you budget for that? Do you wait until everything needs to be replaced and do a capital campaign? How do you recommend churches address this?
I might recommend we have two thoughts here. The first one would be, let's take care of deferred maintenance. And then the second one, once we have a handle on that, how far behind are we? How much funding would it take? And Ken and I have seen church after church in arrears, if you will, on repairs, everything from leaky roof and HVACs to the condition of the parking lot and the classrooms. So I think, first of all, are we in good shape with the present campus? And then if we are, yes, it makes sense to me that you would begin to create a fund, if you will. So you're elevating money available for next campus, next wing, but I would do it in that order. I wouldn't let it fall apart while saving money for some new wing or new plant.
So one of the things that I think is really important to understand is that there's this talk about the impact of the economy on people's lives. And there's this supposition that changes in the economy really impact giving. And in over the last 50 or 60 years, there have been a couple of times that really did happen, 2008, 2009. But many of the recessions, times of struggle that our country has gone through, the giving actually increased during those periods. So there's not an absolute correlation between recessions and giving. The other thing to point out is that when you look at the change in giving, the amount of GDP, the amount of personal income that households have given since World War II is remarkably flat. It really doesn't change. The big change that we're seeing is a shift from churches to nonprofit giving. That's where churches are really struggling. It isn't because people aren't giving. They tend to be giving to away from the church toward nonprofits. The other thing that is impacting the way that giving is happening is that so much more of wealth and income has become concentrated in the upper 10%, or now really in the upper 1%, that your financial leaders, high capacity donors specifically, are giving a larger share because they have a larger share. There's been about a 17% shift in wealth from the bottom 93% to the upper 1% since 1990. So that's being reflected in the giving. And it is these high capacity donors who are being approached by nonprofits, and they are teaching them to do impact giving, meaning a gift is directly correlated to a particular outcome or purchase of something. And so that is what at Horizons we call special giving. We see the growth of that in the church world as we move forward, because frankly, our nonprofits are shaping the expectation of our donors. And if we are not learning what those high capacity donors are excited about and inviting them to join us, what God is doing in that area within the passions that God is already stirring up, and then we'll continue to see that shift happen. I know that makes a lot of people uncomfortable because we would love to say that we want everyone to give sacrificially to our ministries, and that would happen in a way of equal sacrifice. But the communication is not only needs to be different between age groups. It needs to be different between economic levels, because they're used to hearing different things in the same way that millennials have different motivations and preferences to boomers. Really high capacity donors have different preferences and motivations. And if we just treat everybody the same, in the sense that not treat them the same, but communicate with them in the same way, then we're not going to have the success that we used to have when our funding was primarily coming from the builder generation who wanted to see the institution built up. So I just want to remind you that as much uncertainty as there is out there, Americans' generosity really remained remarkably constant. The question is, are they funding your ministry? So we've got two questions: why give, and why give to you? And it's important that you're able to make a case as to why you are the best recipient of those dollars, because as generations move through, people are taking the perspective that I'm going to tithe, and I'm going to give some of my tithe to these faith-based nonprofits. I'm going to give some to other places. So it is a both and, teaching biblical stewardship and making the case that when you invest through the ministries of our church, you are going to see incredible returns when you join God in what God is already doing in our church. So I don't want you to lose all hope to do with uncertainty, because largely the dollars are going to be there. The question is, are they going to come to your church? And it's going to take change and agility and a willingness to let go of some things that are not having the impact they once did. We call that measuring effectiveness. But our surveys that we do quarterly show us that about a third of churches are doing really, really well. And so those are small churches, those are big churches. So there's a lot to be excited about. Our God is bigger than the chaos. And but we have to join God, and we have to be wise about how we communicate and how we structure and how we spend to build confidence, because people give or believe in the mission. They give based on the fiscal responsibility, how well they perceive that you are managing those dollars, and they give for personal relationships. Now, that's how they choose one group or one place to invest their dollars over another. We know that the motivation for giving ideally is coming as a response to God's goodness in our lives. But not everybody's in the same place, and it takes multiple communication styles, methods, and we have to be able to demonstrate that we're really good stewards of what people have entrusted us with. And this is where this advice from Capeman and Krause is so helpful, because we cannot be stodgy. We cannot be looking back. You've got to be nimble. You've got to be willing to adjust and change, because this is our new ministry environment. Dave, Ken, anything before we say goodbye to our listeners today?
Well, in the same way that we thought that our staff and leadership are valuable and we want to have opinions coming from everybody, we want to listen to what our donors are saying to us, because I'm with you. More and more people want to give to a cause or give to a few items where they can have impact. So let us explain to people the impact that we have. And so often that impact is right here. Let's do something right here for the gospel. And that will be a good start to a message.
Well spoken.
My
Ken?
only thing, the only thing I'd say is it's never too late to have these types of conversations. Now is just as important of a time. And so it's one of those things where we want to make sure, again, as you guys think through this, remember, you're not alone, and it's never too late to have these conversations.